Hello and welcome to the Three Hamster Boys YouTube channel. I'm Jeff and we're in the middle of our maybe 40-day challenge. Today is day 22 and it is part 2 of my Navy tales, I guess. Yesterday I talked about why I joined the Navy, and today I'm going to talk about what it's like to be in the Navy as in nuclear power and on submarines. So yesterday we kind of ended with me going to boot camp. So the first part of my Navy career is pretty simple. You go to boot camp. After that, you go to a trade school, and I became a machinist mate, which basically means you learn all the mechanical parts of running an engine room. And then after that, you go to Orlando. Back then it was in Orlando, to nuclear power school, which is 6 months of academics. So basically, you do 6 months of science and math to go from basically a first-year student to a fourth-year nuclear engineering. So you cover a bunch of stuff from basic math to calculus to basic sciences to thermodynamics and nuclear fission. And so if you get through that, then you do another 6 months as practical. So you go to these plants in 3 different states and you actually work on a nuclear power plant. You have to be able to not only understand mechanically how it works, but you also have to do actions and fulfill certain requirements in order to run the reactor and the engine room. Once you get done with that, then you get to go to your first boat. And I say boat because a submarine is considered a boat because it's a fairly small boat. To go back to nuclear power school and the practical side of it, it really about 30% drop out. So if you get through that, it's a pretty good accomplishment, but it's only the beginning of it. Once you go to your first submarines, and like I said, they call it a boat because it's considered fairly small. But when you think of a submarine, don't think of it as a World War II submarine where you've got, 2 rows of, hanging, dangling hammocks where people are sleeping and you're sleeping on top of torpedoes, which I've done. But think of it as 300, 400 feet long, 3 levels in there. There's full mess decks, full eating area, laundry, entertainment area, everything's in there. And you also have 125 guys or so sleeping in there. So it's a pretty big place to be. I always tell people that it reminds me of being inside of a mall. So that's probably the second kind of thing that people always ask me is, is there any glass in there so you can look outside, windows to look outside? Once you get below 50 or 60 feet, it's dark. And so number one, glass is only for movies, and number 2, it serves no purpose to have glass down there. So there is no glass windows. You go in there and when you go out to sea, you go underneath the water and you just stay underneath the water. Part of what you do when you get onto your submarine is you have to do 2 qualifications. One is you qualify for your job. So there's different watches that you do, and you have to learn different aspects of those and get qualified to do that job. So basically, you do the lower level or the upper level, or your engine room supervisor or something like that. The other thing you qualify is submarines, and you have basically 12 months to qualify submarines. And this is really, this is the part that is the hardest and also the one that gives you the most pride. In order to stay on submarines, you have to be able to qualify on every system in the submarine. And so you basically get your card and you go to each one of the different jobs on the submarine and you ask them how they do their job. And then they're going to test you to make sure you remember. You have to learn because there is no one else to help. So if you have to step in and someone tells you to do this or that, you have to be able to do it. And you have to understand what you're doing. when I was on a submarine, I played a lot of different parts. Sometimes if they were short on sonar guys, I'd go to sonar. If they needed someone to drive the boat, I'd go up there and drive the boat. Even though I was in nuclear power and that wasn't my job, it's what you did. I worked in the kitchen a couple times because they needed someone to work in the kitchen. And so it's one really tight-knit group. Of all the things that I missed from being in the Navy, it's the people that I was around. It wasn't always great though. I would go 30, 40 hours without sleep. You worked really long hours. There was no backup. So if something happened while you were underway, you had to fix it. You had to make it better. You had to make it work. So, and everyone in there is 18 to 24. There's a few senior guys that are more than 24, but really it's a bunch of really young guys. Now, that's changing. There's women on submarines now, which is a huge difference when there's just a bunch of 20-year-old guys on there. But I think that when you think of submarines, you need to think it's fairly big, but it's tight. We always joke that when they built submarines, they built all the machines and everything, and then they go, oh, we need beds. So the third thing that I like to talk about, which is true rumor, is what they call hot rack, hot bunking. And that is that 2 people to 1 bed or 3 people to 2 beds. And while you're on watch, the other 2 people or the other person is sleeping. It is one of the oddest parts of being on submarines is that you just don't have enough beds. So you have to switch out. When I went on my very first cruise, we were certifying the submarine because it was right after we got commissioned, and they had a bunch of civilians on there from the shipyard that had helped build it, and they were helping us test it and make sure everything was working correctly. So we had to set up bunks in the torpedo room. So the first time I slept, I was hot racking with temporary bunks in the torpedo room. And then whenever they wanted to test the torpedo room, we had to take the bunks out, throw them out into the hallway, and go study while they were testing the systems in the torpedo room. Do I miss it? Yeah, I do miss it. I did 2 tours on submarines. One was the USS Honolulu, which was a fast attack submarine, and one was on the John Marshall, which was a ballistic missile submarine, so it's a little bit larger because it used to carry ballistic missiles. But as part of a treaty, they took away the ability to shoot missiles, and they converted it into basically a special project submarine. We did a bunch of research projects. We did some other things that were pretty cool, and I really can't talk about. But it was very different than a fast attack submarine, which is, you're sitting there, you're ready to go, you go chase people, you go take pictures, you do a bunch of stuff. So it's very different. But at the end of those 2 tours, they basically said you have to not be on submarines anymore. You have to go be on land, and then you can come back to submarines afterwards. And I've said at that time, I've been in about 9 years, and I said I think I'm ready to try something different and go back to school. So I'm still in contact with the people that I was in the Navy with. I got to do some really great traveling. And I think tomorrow what I'll do is I'll go over my 5 favorite places I went to. But the people you miss because you spend so much time with them. But the other side of this is that I'm on dry land. I'm not out to sea. I'm not in dangerous places. And so it becomes much calmer and nicer to be in port. It's a hard adjustment though. I remember when I got out, they said, the life expectancy for submariners is 5 years. Usually because they try to do something crazy to get that exhilaration, that the feeling that you're needed, because you do stuff that's life or death situations in the Navy, and you get out and all of a sudden you don't do any of that. So I think that part of the adjustment is understanding that you're starting over, you're starting at a different place than you left the Navy, but eventually you kind of normalize and you get through it. So that's why I'm doing this. I'm trying to normalize and get back to normal 30 years later. So that was my time in submarines. Like I said, I loved it, but I don't miss it. But it's crazy. Hopefully I'll get some more things hanging up that are related to submarines, and then we'll kind of describe what those are. So hopefully this video was enjoyable. Don't forget to follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at @3 Hamster Boys. If you liked the video, hit like. And if you'd like to see more of our videos, hit subscribe. As we get to the end of this, our other series will start rolling up. All right, so thank you, and we'll see you next time.